Hey, it's Yuko, the former teacher turned instructional designer. I thought I would go through how to use Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomies in instructional design because I used it a lot as a teacher, and even now as an instructional designer I use it as well. I also thought I would show you a creation from Genially. So I was introduced to Genially from my new contract, and so they use Genially for all of their slide decks, and I've absolutely fallen in love with the platform. It's from Spain originally. Anyway, it's really interactive, it's easy to use. I picked it up straight away. They've got PDs on the site. The free version is excellent. There's so much you can do with it. It's fun and interactive, and to be honest, I would definitely replace PowerPoint and Keynote with Genially. So let's get started. So this little e-learning task I created is called Designing Effective Learning Outcomes. It should be about 10 minutes, probably shorter, and it just goes through what Bloom's taxonomy is, what Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy is, how they revised it, how to use it and apply it in instructional design, and there are little knowledge checks throughout the e-learning course, as well as one at the end. I've also included some resources that I made and references as well. Alright, so let's get started designing effective learning outcomes using Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy. So I've used my brand colors, the purple, and I've also used my brand font where I could, which is Poppins. I really like the little icons and illustrations because they're cute and colorful. So, what, why, how? This is just a little course outline. Learn how to design powerful learning objectives that align with teaching and assessment. Alright, so here are our learning objectives. You know I always start with them. That's how I plan my e-learning, using backward design. Start with the goal that you have in mind. So by the end of this e-learning course, you will successfully be able to 1. Describe Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomies. 2. Identify the key differences between them. 3. Apply them to write clear and measurable learning objectives. Level up your instructional design skills. Let's go! So I thought it would be for people like me who are IDs and need a bit of a refresher, or people who are new to ID and don't know anything about it. Alright, so first we've got Bloom's taxonomy. So it was created by Benjamin Bloom in 1956, and it describes different levels of critical thinking and cognitive learning. So you've got basic recall at the bottom to higher order thinking. So I'm going to click through. What I love about Genially is they have a reveal feature. So if you click Bloom's taxonomy, click the title, and at the bottom you've got the bottom of the pyramid. It starts with knowledge, so basic knowledge. Then you've got comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So it should be like a 6-level pyramid, but on Canva I found this one and I was like, 7 levels is fine. So the top one is a sparkle. Alright, so applying Bloom's taxonomy in instructional design. So I've got 3 little windows over here. Okay, here we go. Click on each concept to get a brief definition and example in instructional design. Knowledge. So remember that was the bottom of our pyramid in Bloom's taxonomy. I like how there's a little hover feature in Genially and they just kind of pop out. Super fun. Okay, knowledge. Your objective is to recall the ADDIE model. And if I click my little book and pencil, it gives me a window that I can open. So my task that would go along with my objective is to create a quick recall task, such as an acrostic, to write the acronym ADDIE as well as what each letter stands for. So I've done that here. ADDIE, the A stands for analysis. Identify the needs and objectives of the training. So what do we want to achieve with this training? Your first D. Design. Plan the learning objectives, content and methods. Second D is for development. Create the actual training materials such as modules, presentations and activities. I is for implementation. Deliver the training to learners. What I think about ADDIE is it is kind of outdated. It assumes it is an in-person training. I guess this can be seen as giving the e-learning course to them, but yeah. So the E, evaluation. Assess the effectiveness of the training and make improvements. What I also think about ADDIE is that your evaluation should be continuous throughout the course. You should be trying to get feedback anytime, all the time. Alright, application. Our objective is to apply gamification elements such as points and a leaderboard to a knowledge check quiz. Fun! Okay, so I'll click my little puzzle. Here I've got a quick true false. Learning objectives are necessary for effective learning. True. And genuinely, when you get it right, they've got a little sound. The wrong sound is also kind of intense. I've added a little gem here. If you click it, confetti comes out, or streamers. Alright, evaluation. This is the top of Bloom's taxonomy. So the objective is to go through your ID course through the eyes of a learner to see if your learning objectives are achieved. And if we click it, evaluation run through. Obviously. Okay, now we're moving on to Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy. So it was revised by so Bloom's taxonomy was revised by Anderson and Krathwohl in 2001. It emphasizes action, you're going to see why, and the top levels are reordered. It's a pyramid form, but have a look, the bottom, it's remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create, and then the top of our pyramid. It emphasizes action because you have verbs, so it's focused on the learner to do these things. I've got my little monster icon, and if you click it, you've got another little knowledge check. Order the components of Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy in order. So remember, we start with remember at the bottom, understand. Then we have apply. Then we have analyze, evaluate, and then create is the top. So Anderson and Krathwohl, not only did they change the nouns to verbs, but they changed evaluate and create. So it used to be synthesis and then evaluate, but the highest order thinking skill is to make something with what you've learnt. Alright, now the knowledge dimension. So there are 4 different types of knowledge. There's factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. This uses a flip card system that is in Genially. I really like it. So what is factual knowledge? They're just basic facts. For example, Bloom's taxonomy. I can recall that. I'm pretty sure you can now too. Conceptual learning, what's that? So relationships between or among ideas. For example, the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy denotes the difficulty of the learning or skill. So we know that at the bottom, for Bloom's taxonomy, we have knowledge, and at the top we have evaluation. Okay, procedural knowledge. It's how to do stuff. So for example, how to apply Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy to instructional design. Lastly, we've got metacognitive knowledge. So this is just thinking about our own thinking. For example, reflecting on our learning. That's why it's so important to reflect on what we've learned. For example, do I understand it? And breaking down steps to solve a problem. So if I have to create an e-learning, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to use backward design, plan my learning objectives, what do I want learners to know at the end, and then I'm going to create the assessment that I think will cover what they will know, and then I'll create all of my learning resources. And then once I have that plan, I can create an e-learning module. Alright, so we're comparing the taxonomies here. I've got Bloom's taxonomy, click to reveal Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy, and I've got the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy here. So I've got knowledge, which becomes remembering. Comprehension becomes understanding. Application becomes apply. Analysis becomes analyze. Synthesis becomes evaluate, because remember these 2 levels have switched. And evaluation becomes create. So you can see side to side the differences between Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy. Okay, so how do we apply the taxonomies to instructional design? Obviously it's up to you to choose which one. I prefer Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy because it does have a focus on the learner and action verbs, and creating is the top of the pyramid, which means it's the highest order thinking skill. So 1, you get to choose a cognitive level that fits your learning goals. So what do you want to learn? How hard do you want to learn? 2, use measurable command term verbs. You know, for every e-learning task that I create, I'll use a Bloom's taxonomy or Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy command term verb at the beginning. So align tasks and assessments with that level. So you know, for example, if I want a very high order thinking skill, I'm going to use something like develop an argument, or create a video, or create a presentation, something like this. Okay, lastly, scaffold learning from simple to complex. So you don't want to overwhelm learners. You want them to feel confident, and they'll be able to do this if you start with lower order thinking skills like remember, and then you go to something a bit more difficult like create. Okay, so here we can brainstorm tasks for different levels. I've got remember all the way to create. So remember, ask for quick recall such as creating lists, matching, label, multiple choice questions. Understand. You want to explain, identify, and describe. These are your main command term verbs. Well, they're not your main. They're very easy to use. Things like definitions. Okay, apply. Show the skills that you've learned. Simulate, illustrate, use, and solve. So it's not quite creating, but you're using what you do know in an existing format. Okay, analyze. So you need to start to break it down. Differentiate, appraise, infer, evaluate. So you want to make a judgment to show how well you know the thing. So for example, we're revising something, compare and contrast, justify. Okay, lastly, create. It's a highest order thinking skill. So make something to show what you've learnt. Design, develop, construct, or produce. Alright, so now we're going to have a go. Rewrite this learning objective to incorporate command term verbs used in Bloom's or Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy. I've got a little pencil here. It's clickable, so students will learn about photosynthesis. We will change that to understand the process of photosynthesis. So with short answer, it's a little bit hard to assess on here because you're just going to have to write every single possible correct answer, including spellings. Okay, so here we've got a quick check, which is our assessment thing. So let's see what you know. We're going to click this image here, click to reveal, and here's our first question. Okay, which taxonomy introduced create? That would be Anderson and Krathwohl's because it's a verb. Alright. That revealed a different one, a different question. What are the 4 knowledge types? So you can select more than one answer. One of the shortfalls of Genially is this sort of question. If you don't think to move down, you'll probably just select the first 4. But we've got metacognitive, procedural, conceptual, and factual. And lastly, the banana. Write one objective related to instructional design at the analyze level. So something like compare the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Alright, moving on. So how can using Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomies improve learning? Is it from AI? No. Is there no assessment? No, we have assessment. They're measurable goals. This is our summary. So far we've learned Bloom's taxonomy is the original framework for thinking levels. It was created in 1956. Pretty cool from then. Anderson and Krathwohl, in 2001, they updated Bloom's taxonomy with verbs instead of nouns, and then they changed the top 2 tiers. So synthesis and evaluation became evaluate and create. So we can apply Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy by aligning outcomes, tasks, and assessment. So I've got a tip here. The easiest way to incorporate Bloom's and Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy is in your learning objectives by using command term verbs. Alright, here we go. Next steps. Where do we go from here? Okay, so you can review your own e-learning plans. You can identify the level of each learning objective. You can revise your learning objectives using command term verbs and in turn revise your assessments and your tasks. I've got these so all of these images are just stock photos from Genially, which are free, which is great. They don't mean anything, they're just aesthetic. Anyway, so I've got my star icons here, and they're my resources. So, command term verbs, click for a PDF. So I'm going to click my logo, UCO Instructional Design. And here we go. This is my Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy command term verbs. super aesthetic. I love the colors. So that's a download. This is a PDF. This is a PNG, but I'll make it a downloadable PDF. Then we've got our course planning template. You can click for an e-learning planning guide. Again, click my logo. And here's our instructional design planning template. And we've got some references and links as well. Because I did use information from Bloom's Taxonomy, here is a link to the book. And I did use information from Anderson and Krathwohl's Taxonomy, so here is a link to their book. And then obviously I'm going to put in a link to my own website because we've got to get in there. Here's my portfolio. Alright. And we've reached the end. The confetti comes out. You did it. Thank you for completing this e-learning course on Bloom and Anderson and Krathwohl's Taxonomy in Instructional Design. Happy planning. You can contact me at my website, yukoinstructionaldesign.com, YouTube, Instagram and TikTok. All of these links are clickable. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So TLDR, this is an e-learning module I created for Bloom's Taxonomy and Anderson and Krathwohl's Taxonomy in Instructional Design. I created this e-learning task in Genially. It's so easy to get. Look, this is not sponsored by Genially. I wish I was sponsored by Genially, but yeah, it's so easy to use. It's accessible, very interactive and fun, super cute. This was the free version, so yeah, get on Genially if you can. And if you like this video, then please like and subscribe. Check out my other videos. If you have anything that you want me to cover, any other learning concepts, or yeah, anything, then please let me know in the comments below. Thanks, bye.